Topic for this Q&A is empathy in the B2B world. Got a few really good questions from folks who do B2B selling. Just for some background here, B2B stands for business to business. You're one business, the other business is the person you're selling to. So if you are selling vacuum cleaners in a retail environment, you're probably not doing a lot of B2B. But for the rest of us, we're selling to businesses. Now, the thing about a business is it has humans in it, and those humans make human decisions. The key difference is they're spending someone else's money. And so all of the drama and back and forth that we usually have with ourselves about money is different. And the other key thing to remember is that the person you're selling to probably isn't the owner. So that's what I want to talk about. Years and years ago, we were on a road trip and we stopped at one of those roast beef stands. It was an Arby's or something like that. And it was hot and I wanted an iced tea, but I don't put sugar in my drinks. So we got to the front of the line and I said to the person behind the counter, I'd like an iced tea with no sugar, please. And she said, we don't have that. All the iced tea already has sugar in it. And I said, do you have hot tea? She said, yes. I said, do you have ice? She said, yes. I said, I'd like to order a cup of hot tea and a big glass of ice, please. And she gave it to me and then watched as I poured the tea into the ice, amazed that that was the recipe for iced tea. And this has really stood out for me for a couple of reasons. First of all, that someone didn't know the formula for iced tea. But secondly, that this person had so much difficulty acting like an owner. Because you and I both know that if we owned a roast beef stand and we could make $1.50 profit on a 6-cent tea bag, we probably would have figured out how to do so. But this wasn't her job. Her job was to do what her boss told her to do. And what her boss told her to do was to take menu items and exchange them for money. Period. That's it. Use no initiative. And the boss got what he wanted. Employees who used no initiative. So if we start with that as the most horrible example of bureaucracy, we can move our way up to the shortcut that most bosses use. And the shortcut is money. They say to their employees, don't use a lot of initiative, but please spend less money. Do what we did yesterday, but cheaper. That's why RFP exists. That's why an RFP, the request for proposals, sends out a note to 100 people, 100 companies. And they say to those companies, we are about to buy 300 wool beret for our staff. We want the berets to be this color, this weight, bid against yourselves. And the employee's job is to buy the cheapest one. So if you go to that employee and say, we reject your RFP, we sell ethical berets that are made in a country that respects workers' rights, that employee is probably not going to listen to you because that employee has a boss who's using money as the sole measure of performance. So when you go to that person, you're saying to yourself, because empathy is hard, if I were you, I would buy this because I have seen the conditions and I don't want to be complicit. Or you're saying to yourself, if I was the owner of this company, I would buy this. Because as the owner of the company, I could tell a story to myself, to my employees, to my customers about how ethical we are and how useful our choices are. And our market share would grow and we would easily make back the money that we lost here. But the person you're selling to is not the owner. The person you're selling to has only two axes that they're thinking about, if they're in the category I'm talking about. Axis number one is this cheaper? Because that's my job. Buy it cheaper. And axis number two is, if it's not, what will I tell my boss? And that question, what will I tell my boss, is the secret to B2B selling, B2B marketing, when you're trying to bring change to a market. So here's the story, true story. Someone was working with me at one of my seminars, and his project was this. It turned out that the Department of Homeland Security or similar had made a rule that hospitals above a certain size needed to have a safety and evacuation plan on file with the federal government, which is totally reasonable because there's hundreds of sick people in beds. What are you going to do if there's a hurricane? What are you going to do if there's a fire? You have to have a plan. The plan has to be formatted a certain way. So he and his team had spent months putting together this software that would solve a real problem for the hospital. The hospital had to fill this thing out. It was going to take them an enormous amount of effort to do so. And using his company would save them a whole bunch of trouble. So thinking like an owner, the owner of the hospital, he made a rational pitch to the hospital, to every person he could find at the hospital, saying, you should buy this from me. And it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is that almost every person he approached said to themselves, this is not my job. It is not my job to initiate a new project. It is not my job to spend $25,000 on something that's not in the budget. It is not my job to worry about filing this paperwork. And when he tried to get to the, quote, owner of the hospital, that person is insulated because there's secretaries and assistants and people running interference. And they spend almost no time actually doing new stuff. Their job is to respond to the internal people at the hospital who want to do something new. So he was stuck. Well, here's what we came up with. He went to the post office and sent a certified letter, wrapped in that blue paper that lawsuits come in, to the general counsel of the hospital. Now, when the general counsel of a hospital gets a certified letter, she knows she has a problem, because her job as the general counsel is to keep the hospital out of trouble. Now, here comes this letter, and the letter says, did you know that the federal government requires you to have this form? And according to our research, you don't have one. You're in breach of the regulations. This is a problem. Would you like my help to solve it? Signed, Bob. Now, the general counsel has a problem. He has created a problem for her. Actually, the federal government created the problem. He's just pointed it out. If the general counsel doesn't do anything, the general counsel has broken her promise to the CEO. Because if she doesn't do anything and something comes up months or years later and they get fined, the general counsel will have to say to the CEO, yes, I knew about that and I didn't do anything. But now that she knows about it, she has to do something. What will I tell my boss? What I will tell my boss is, good news. We found out about this federal regulation. It was going to cost us months and a fortune to fix it, but I found a vendor who will take care of it for us in no time. Thank you very much. That is marketing. Because what we've done is we've understood the point of view of the person we seek to serve. And what we had to do to serve them was create a problem for them. Because in most situations, in most B2B sales, that is what makes change happen. Most people in an organization do not seek to make things better. They seek to fix things that are broken and then bring that story to their boss. When they're trying to make things better, it tends to be along the axis of money, which pushes you to be cheaper, or the dramatically more efficient solution, which means cheaper. You can't win by being cheaper. What you can win at is by helping your organizations play a new game. So that was a long Q&A, but there you go. B2B selling has many layers within layers within layers, which is why it's so interesting. Thanks.